So our first panel, Democracy Dies with Dorsey, Big Tech Censorship. So you may have noticed an issue's developed with our various and modern platforms over the last couple of years. What was initially set up to be safeguarded and the new frontier of free speech and communication seems to have kind of not become that anymore. It may or not be a coincidence that when these platforms gained the peak of their popularity and started to be used for something other than just telling someone, what they were doing at the gym or what they were eating and different things like that, these big tech companies kind of got in the way and said, that's enough of that. Innovation be damned, which is ironic because that's how they gained their bully purpose to begin with. Billion-dollar tech companies started naming the haves and the have-nots, the cans and the can'ts. Now, I suppose at first it seemed harmless, which is usually how it starts. But I can point a finger at several people in the back room, and you're going to see them on the stage here in just a bit, that have a valid argument of being censored and blackballed on social media outlets. Are they valid? They could be. Should any form of censorship in anyone be allowed or justified? Should the tech giants, who are just people with ideas just like you and me, be allowed to make calls and intervene on behalf of their own personal bias? Where does the line get drawn? And how long should we tolerate the ability to further restrict the foundation that we helped build their empires on? Our first panel this afternoon, please welcome to the stage our moderator, one of my good friends and founding members of Myth Informed, Brian Edwards. Our speakers, he's been featured in the New York Times and his famous Twitch streamer, Stephen Bonnell. The queen of controversial conversations, Ariel Scarcella. Yeah, that's fine. Or whichever, that's fine. And worldwide renowned political shit talker, Niko House. And author and video essayist, Peter Coffin.
All right. Welcome to Better Discourse. I'm your moderator, Brian Edward. And today our panel is Democracy Dies with Dorsey. That's meant to be a little bit funny because some of that censorship is coming from social media. But I did hear the quote, "When you tear out a man's tongue, you're not proving him a liar. You're only telling the world that you fear what he might say." And that was said by some guy named Tyrion from some show named Game of Thrones. And while we're not in Westeros, we're in the real world, censorship and these kind of things are pretty much an issue. And I wanted to start the conversation off by citing the ACLU, which may or may not be a defender of civil liberties right now. That could be debated. But it says that there's two fundamental principles that come into play involving free expression. The first is the government cannot limit expression just because any listener or even the majority of a community is offended by its content. But that's balanced by a second principle, that expression may be restricted only if it clearly causes direct and imminent harm to an important social interest. So I wanted to ask some of the panelists, do you agree with the sentiments of the ACLU here, or do you feel like this second principle is being abused? And if so, how and by whom? And let's start with Ariel.
It's a loaded question, right? Because I think all of us, correct me if I'm wrong, all of us have been censored at one point. Maybe not you, because you're a little bit more leaning far left at the moment.
I have absolutely been censored.
Have you?
Don't worry.
Okay.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
then it's a problem across the political spectrum, right? I think that, as far as I'm concerned, I've had people come for me, you know, in multiple ways, try to censor me, and even if I disagree with them to the core, I don't think anybody should be censored, and I especially don't think any major network should be censoring anybody. I think, if anything, if I have a good enough argument, my argument will win in the long run anyway.
Okay. Peter.
Well, I mean, is it really an ideal, or is it a question of institutional power? That's where I'm always coming from on this. What are you saying? Where is it coming from? Should you be allowed to criticize power? And yes, obviously. Are you going to be? That's another heavy question. I do think that's probably the kind of stuff that I would like to be trying to address here.
Okay. Niko, where are you at?
So a friend of mine, Garland Nixon, used to sit on the board of the ACLU, and he left because he understands that, I mean, that principle is just, it's wrong. It's unethical. We can't have such a principle when we don't understand all of the agendas that every single powerful institution has. And so where they may convince the public that some speech is or could be dangerous to them, where they're merely just trying to push an ulterior motive that we may not yet be aware of. And I think we see that time and time and time and time again. And so who's to say what's dangerous? Something could appear dangerous in the short term, but ultimately end up working out in the long term. But at the end of the day, like, I feel like everybody who knows me knows I'm a free speech absolutist. And the only way to defeat bad speech is just with more speech, and just make sure you know what the hell you're talking about when you address it. Like, that's the way to conquer this fear of, what if they say something bad? Bad things could happen. Well, allow speech to flow freely, and I guarantee you problems will begin to solve themselves.
Yeah, can I just piggyback on that point? Because this is one thing an ex-girlfriend said of, the only thing I got from that relationship was this point. And she said that no matter what somebody says, we should allow them to say it, because people are thinking it anyway. And when you allow them to say it publicly, you also allow people to be aware that they're saying possibly something that's incorrect, and then you can correct them on it. But you wouldn't be able to correct them if they didn't have the opportunity to say it in the first place.
Destiny, what do you think?
I think that the First Amendment is important. I think it's beautiful. I think it's well worded. And I think freedom of speech as a concept is something that should be defended. But I think oftentimes people misapply it to private platforms like Twitter and Facebook, and they try to take these arguments about whether or not the government should abridge our freedom of speech, which it shouldn't, except in certain dire cases, like yelling fire in a crowded theater, or the spreading of like child pornography or something, of course, which I think we all agree with. But I think that applying those same arguments to private institutions actually, in a way, becomes an anti-First Amendment argument. So I do agree that the First Amendment is important insofar as it applies to the government, but those principles shouldn't carry forward to every single private platform that we engage in, because one of your freedoms as an owner of a private platform is to determine what type of content do I want posted on this particular platform.
But what if that platform has become a monopoly? I think that's a good argument to combat that point, too.
I mean, if a platform has become a monopoly, then we can talk about antitrust laws, we can talk about things like this, but you cannot enforce a platform to just have all content on it. It's, it's an anti-First Amendment argument. I mean,
I'm still trying to understand, why do people keep pretending as if Facebook is a private platform? Like, it's not.
Because the definition
it's
of
not.
private
They literally
is
have former CIA agents working within Facebook. Facebook goes into Congress, comes up with a bunch of nonsense after they get accused of something, and somehow, some way, they always end up coming out on top. In fact, it is literally a law that is allowing them to act as arbiters of truthful or false information, because of a law that it's protecting them. And whenever anyone goes to try and change it, they're the ones who have the money to then influence politicians. Not that they even have to, but they have the money to influence politicians to make sure that that law that they are benefiting from continues to allow them to then influence the outcome of elections in one form or another. At the end of the day, when they constantly act on behalf of the government, especially when it seems that there is a partisan agenda involved, when they go to the government and get exactly what they want, they're not being held accountable like other private institutions have been held accountable. At what point do we stop pretending that words mean, that private and public mean whatever they say it means, when they're clearly acting as a public arm of the government?
So, that's a conversation we get into. So private means not government, means privately owned. Facebook is a privately owned company. It's not owned by the government. If you want to have a conversation about whether or not Section 230 should be repealed, which it shouldn't be, if you want to have a conversation about whether or not platforms should be allowed to moderate their content, which they absolutely should be, if you want to have a conversation about whether or not you should be allowed to lobby the government, I think most of us agree you probably should be to some limited extent. Those are all great conversations to have. But the idea that just because a private company lobbies the government, they're somehow not
Are you
private.
familiar with InQtel? Do you know what InQtel is?
Don't need a what?
The CIA's venture capitalist firm in Arlington, Virginia. Basically, I can go through the whole way they did it, but basically Peter Thiel and InQtel invested into Facebook. That's how Facebook became what it was and overtook MySpace. And this is a thing that we've seen InQtel do because they have unlimited funding sources. Another example I can give you is how Google came out of nowhere and overtook Yahoo. It's because InQtel had unlimited money to ensure that Google was able to overtake Yahoo. That's how Amazon went from being a failed business platform, a failed business model, and eBay was destroying them. And then out of nowhere, where Jeff Bezos inexplicably becomes the most wealthy man in the world. That's how Tesla was a failed business, relying only and exclusively on our subsidies, and then now Elon Musk is the most successful man in the world. Yeah, so my point is, the reason Facebook has hit the peak that it's hit is because of the government. So even though it's private, it's just once again, it's just another way to rebrand public, but they just don't call it that.
Well, beyond if you want to have a conversation about whether or not some subsidy for electric vehicles should be repealed, if you want to have a conversation about whether some people should be allowed to privately invest in a company,
no. I just said the government literally created
the problem is that
because you're doing Destiny. What we're not going to do today. So here's what we're not going to do today. You're not going to try to poke holes about shit that nobody's talking about. I said the government had their venture capitalist firm invest in a private company where no one else could compete. That's what we're talking about.
When you say something along the lines of like, how did Jeff Bezos became a millionaire
overnight?
I didn't say
how. I gave you the reason as to
Bezos
why.
became a billionaire overnight.
I didn't say how. I didn't ask how.
It's because everybody in this room probably uses Amazon Prime. Everybody in this room probably buys shit off Amazon. Everybody in this room probably uses Amazon Video. Like, we know why these companies become huge, because they offer products that everybody in society uses. If you want to talk about repealing an individual law, if you want to talk about repealing an individual law,
please tell me one company that can compete with unlimited funding from the government.
Nobody's getting unlimited funding from the government.
I just told you.
You're talking to me about specific subsidies that exist for these companies. If you want to argue,
we got to go to the next question. We got to go to the next question.
But this is a conspiracy.
One second. Let me cut in. Let's hear from the Marxist.
Yeah. Well, see, the purpose of the state is to uphold class relations, right?
Go on.
Yeah. So that's just
I'm the moderator. I'm not allowed to
agree. Marxist.
Anyway, the purpose of the state is to uphold class relations. Fundamental difference between the two classes: owner, not owner, right? Facebook is an owner. They benefit from all the action that the state does. Ultimately, I'm going to have to side with Niko on this. Like, it's going to be either through state subsidies, either through investment, either through any of that, that Facebook gains its dominance, that Amazon gains its dominance. Again, it was just a dumb bookstore in the 1990s that was nearing the, if you remember, the dot-com bubble. That was, they were going to go down with that. Why didn't they? That's, in my opinion, that's really the question here. It's 100%, yeah. I'm just basically with you on this.
Like, the only way you can invest into SpaceX is to buy stocks in Google. And SpaceX is literally basically owned by the Pentagon now. So, like, that's a coincidence?
So is your argument that because government has undue influences over these social media entities, that therefore they're obstructing free speech, but not directly through law, but indirectly through company policy?
Yeah, where they don't have to be held accountable for what they do.
What do you mean by that? They don't have to be held accountable?
The government can't be held accountable for something, because people like Destiny are going to come up here and make an argument saying, no, that's just a private company. That's not the government doing that. Yeah, the government is literally letting them skate at every turn, no matter how much information gets put on them, no matter how much people find out they're using their monopoly to influence the outcome of politics. But then when we go and try to hold anybody accountable, the government just ultimately gives Facebook what they want again, and then Facebook just starts the metaverse. And
so the reason why nobody is held accountable is because at the end of the day, all we do is we go online and we shitpost about how horrible these companies are, but you can't actually point to a piece of legislation that you'd want repealed. You can't point to some actual.
We could literally just reform 230.
You can't. If you want to talk about 230, you can't. Repealing 230 would lead to an
I didn't say
unbelievable.
so I didn't say repeal.
You can talk about reforming 230. Reforming 230.
You can reform 230.
Sure, you can reform 230. That's probably going to destroy every single new website that would.
Why would it do that when you can just reform it and make sure it doesn't do that?
Okay, how would you want to reform? How would you want to reform? Give me a sample. You can scream all you want. It doesn't make you any smarter. It doesn't make your point any more correct.
Try to assign a definition to a word because you don't like the fact that it destroys your argument.
Tell us how you want to reform 230.
I said reform. We can talk about how the reform should look, but it's not going to destroy all future websites.
Tell us how you want to reform 230.
You're being ridiculous.
Give me a sample reform. Give me a sample reform.
You're being ridiculous, bro. Come on.
No, ask him. I want to know a sample reform of 230.
Ariel whispered to me that we should express what Section 230 is. So it's quote, no provider or use of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider.
I had to look that up, by the way. I didn't know what that was. So, like, I'm glad that you said it for people that also don't know what that was.
Yeah, my bad.
So that's Section 230, which gives them certain immunities, right? So
what is the 230 reform that we're looking for?
As long as
so how do you want to change it? Do you want to repeal it, or how should we alter 230?
No, you would reform it to make exceptions in cases like Facebook, for example, where they're acting as publishers, but
Facebook
then you got
doesn't publish.
So then you allow people to sue them as if you were suing a CNN or an MSNBC or a Fox News. Currently, you cannot. That's the problem.
How is it so the entire backbone of the internet, from IRC chats to bulletin message boards in the 80s to GeoCities websites in the 2000s, the only reason why websites can exist is because they require an immunity from being sued if they have user-generated content on their platform.
No, they're private companies.
Can I finish one sentence? Holy shit. Okay, you
don't
want it so that anytime somebody posts something on your website, you can get sued for what another user uploads on your site. If that is the case,
that's not what we're talking about.
If that is the case, that absolutely
Where
is
do
what
you just
you're talking
invent
about.
these fake realities in your head?
There's a reason why
we're talking about Facebook being held accountable for removing people's content, destroying people's businesses,
and nobody
destroying
in the
people's
online internet
brands.
community.
You're talking about random shit posters.
Nobody is talking about reforming 230.
It's a little bit loud and echoey.
My bad.
Yeah, so try not to talk over each other.
Reforming 230 would destroy anybody's ability to start any new internet website where you have user-generated content, because as soon as you can hold a website liable for what users are posting, just because you want to engage in moderation, should you not be allowed to moderate your communities? If you want to make a message board for right-leaning people or for feminists, do you not have the ability to moderate your communities that way? Of course you should be able to do that without being held liable as a publisher or something of information. And these websites, just because they engage in moderation, doesn't make them a publisher. That's ridiculous. To try to say that because somebody puts up a fact check or because somebody puts up or bans certain types of content, they become all of a sudden a publisher of information. What do you think it means to publish something?
When you're getting fun, when you're go ahead.
Yeah, I think here's a problem though. They're not just a neutral platform.
They don't have to be neutral.
Oh, where really?
Yes, really, yeah.
Yes, according.
Yes.
So let's hear why they don't have to be neutral.
Because that's the law. You're not obligated. There is no we just talked about the First Amendment. If you started a private platform where you brought people on to speak, do you think that the First Amendment means that you have to let every single person come on? That's a violation of your First Amendment rights. If I start a forum and I want to talk about how cool dogs are, am I legally obligated to let cat lovers come and shut my forum up with how great their animal? It doesn't make any sense. Of course you don't have to be a neutral platform. Do you think Fox News is a neutral platform? Do you think CNN is a neutral platform? No,
you can sue Fox News and CNN.
You can sue Fox News.
You can literally sue
things
them
that are said on Fox
News. If they lie, you can sue them. If they defame you, you can sue them. If they slander you, you can sue them. That's the difference. When Facebook takes I'll give you an example of consequences. So recently, in Texas actually, a man's son died after taking the vaccine. He was 16 years old, the son was. When he posted a GoFundMe to pay for the funeral, GoFundMe removes him.
You don't have a constitutional right to post on GoFundMe. I'm sorry.
Because of that, obviously it becomes much more difficult to fundraise for that funeral. Now, why did they remove him? It's a literal fact that the vaccine caused this man's son's death, but they're saying because it's spreading vaccine misinformation that he can't fundraise there, because then, of course, would bring attention to the fact that there might be side effects. Facebook removed people for saying that hydroxychloroquine was a legitimate solution, or at least to help while we're waiting for vaccines when it came to COVID. And then doctors were banned. People died. Fucking Destiny, people died.
Are you wait, first of all.
No, what I'm telling you is that there are real consequences when you are removing people because you're pretending to be an arbiter of information when you're literally removing experts. It's one thing if you moderate the content by saying this isn't allowed, you give them a strike. But if you think that they should be removed, then you go through the fucking court of law and you hold them accountable there. And if someone has decided that you are overtly or accidentally causing problems that could lead to mass conflict or violence or whatever, then you allow the courts to settle it. But what you're suggesting is that we should allow this entity that has gotten unlimited funding from the government
They don't.
where you can't, to the point where now you can no
What?
longer actually have competition against them.
All right, Niko, let's hear a rebuttal now.
So everything about hydroxychloroquine has been proven to be ineffective.
Bullshit.
So the fact
See,
that you would bring
rejected
that up,
that.
can I
They
finish?
never
Wait, can I
retract their
finish? Can I
article.
finish?
That's bullshit.
Are you going to
But
scream
go
over
ahead.
me every
Bullshit.
time I start
That's
counteracting the
bullshit.
bullshit you
Go
say
ahead.
here?
Give him a chance.
I need like 10 minutes to go through every fucking stupid thing you just
Go
said.
ahead, go ahead.
So number one, hydroxychloroquine is like the worst example of anything you could brought up of. Okay, number one. Number two, if a private platform wants to ban somebody from their community for any reason, they're allowed to do that. You do not have a constitutional right to post on fucking GoFundMe. Just like any person in this audience doesn't have a constitutional right to come up on. I know you want to talk. Nobody in this audience has a constitutional right to come up here and grab a microphone and scream at somebody. That's part of your First Amendment privilege. If you start a platform,
How are those two things analogous?
You are
How are
allowed
those
to
two things
moderate.
analogous?
You are allowed to moderate that content in any way that you see fit. The idea
Am I-
that you're
am I receiving
obligated-
unlimited money from the
idea that you are
CIA?
Obligated. The
Am
idea
I
that you are
receiving unlimited money?
obligated-
Let him go.
The idea that you are obligated to host all forms of content on your website is a delusional fantasy. I don't know where it came from. I don't know where people got this idea from. There's no case law that supports this. There's no legislation that supports this. There's no constitutional amendment that supports this. It is absolute delusion.
No.
that you
There's
would
literally
hint
a law
this,
that
okay?
says
So
if you
anybody
act
wants
as a
to,
public,
bro, you can't cut me off 30 times
Okay,
after talking
let's
a
take
whole
an
bunch of shit for
example.
like 5 minutes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I brought.
hold on, wait, can I finish responding?
Yeah.
Holy shit, yeah. So if a website decides that they want to moderate their content in the way that they see fit, if they want to ban doctors, if they want to ban experts, if they don't want you to do your whatever fucking GoFundMe, that's completely and totally within their right to do so. And just because they don't want to host your content doesn't mean you can go cry to the federal government and say, I have a right, I have a constitutional right to this platform. That's an insane reading of how the First Amendment works.
Pause.
Now, I don't need to
We're not
pause
talking
off, but
about
I will
the,
finish,
we're not talking
and now
about the
I'm done
First Amendment.
talking. Okay,
We're
so if you
talking
wanna talk,
about
that's fine.
literally Section 230 protects you only and exclusively if you're not behaving as a publisher. So another
Bingo.
great example would be the Hunter Biden situation, where every single time a Hunter Biden article would come out, people were getting banned. People were literally
So,
losing
like, you mean Twitter?
a
Twitter
business.
stopping the link to the.
Oh,
New York
not just
Post
Twitter.
article.
Facebook, Twitter. My friend got banned from Facebook for 7 days. Another one of my friends got removed for
Moderating
posting
is not
an
publishing.
article from mainstream media about Biden on Facebook with no context. Banned. Now, all of a sudden, you're banning people not because the information is wrong, just because you don't like what's being put out there. Now, that's what we call editing. That is editorial. That is publishing, which means you should
Why
be
do you
able to
think
be
Twitter-
pause. You should be able to be held accountable, but you cannot be because you're hiding behind 230.
Why did Twitter ban the Hunter Biden article?
Motherfucker, please explain it to me because we would love to know.
No, wait, you brought it up, so you should know.
Why
about
did they
it. So
ban
tell
it?
me. You tell me.
We're literally trying to find out. Go ahead.
No, we're not trying. It's public information, so you don't know.
Why
I want
they
to hear
ban
you
it?
say, I have no fucking idea why Twitter banned
You don't
it.
even know which article I'm referring to right
I know
now,
exactly
but go
which
ahead.
one. I know exactly what you're referring to.
Which one?
So tell me. You tell me. You brought it up
No,
first.
you just said you know exactly what it is. Go ahead.
Why are you trying to posture right now? You brought up the example. so
You
I want to
just
explain
literally
to
cut me
everybody
off
in
to
here.
ask. You just
I
said
want
you know
to
the
explain-
answer.
Okay.
You know the reason
so
why.
You don't know
I'm
why
telling
it was.
you,
You don't know
if
why.
you know
Okay.
why it was
So
banned,
I'll
please
explain.
enlighten
I
us.
will explain.
All right,
So
let me-
Twitter, wait. So Twitter has a specific policy for hacked materials where if you upload
wasn't hacked.
something on, if you upload
It literally wasn't hacked.
If you did Hunter Biden approve of those images and everything from the laptop being posted?
It wasn't hacked.
And it's a hacked material.
It literally wasn't
so
hacked.
Twitter has also banned people on the
USB.
You're just gonna keep
Here
talking
you
over me
go.
like that makes you correct?
You got it.
I'm right here, dude. You don't have to look at the
It's a
audience.
USB.
Hey, talk
they
to me.
handed
You don't
it
have to
over
look at the
here.
audience.
They were like,
Come on,
hey,
Niko.
post this.
Hey.
New York Times. Is New York Times banned
no,
for
this guy-
posting hacked
Let him
material?
rebut, and then we're getting to the next question.
I'm right here. I don't know who you're
Is
looking
the
at
New
there
York
for. Are you
Times
talking to
banned
somebody
for,
else right now?
I'm trying to
Are
understand.
you lost?
I wasn't going to answer my question.
You gotta let him
talk.
Do we have like a monitor out there
Is the
somewhere
New
where
York
can I
Times
see a picture of me, or-
banned for posting hacked materials? Because last time I checked, they did it all the time.
But Niko, we get the point. You got to let him respond.
But that's my point.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Hey, you are not understanding the lack of consistency.
I understand completely.
That's
You
the
just
issue.
had no idea
You're
what
telling
you
me what the rule
There
is,
was
but they won't explain why they don't consistently
There
follow the
was
fucking rule.
consistency, Because
That's
one,
the problem.
Does
you
anyone in
wanted
the
to
audience have a Xanax?
If you wanted to discuss the Hunter Biden story or post the Hunter Biden story, you were absolutely allowed to, as long as you didn't link to a website that had hacked materials listed on it. Number one, and I know that because I discussed it on Twitter and I get banned. Number one, okay? Number two, there was a left-leaning group that leaked a whole bunch of like police materials, part of this big ACAB thing. I think it was like a year prior, and they got banned for doing the exact same type of thing. This particular story is not a story of political bias. It's a story where you, who has a clear political narrative, has taken one story, completely misrepresented it, and then try to pretend that it supports your side of the political narrative.
Is New York Times banned
That's exactly
for
what it
posting
is.
hack material?
Okay, so it's a yes or no question.
Yes, if you post
no, they're not. They post WikiLeaks leaked material. They have not been banned. What are you talking about?
If you are,
CNN did it.
hey,
Then Trump's
Niko,
taxes just get leaked and it got posted.
I'm right here.
Those are hack materials, correct?
I'm right here.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I'm right here.
So the problem isn't that they are taking their right to enforce their rules. What we're trying to figure out is why are you inconsistently forcing rules? What do you do when those rules are being forced inconsistently and they're supporting a certain political agenda while undermining another? And then at that point, when does that not make you a publisher? And if it does make you a publisher, why can you not be held to the same level of accountability
Niko,
as an actual publisher?
Let's attack this.
Simple.
Let's attack this from a slightly different angle. I'm gonna ask Ariel what she thinks of this. So in 2019, Cedric Richmond, U.S. Congressman from Louisiana, warned Facebook and Google that they had better restrict what he and his colleagues saw as harmful content or face regulation. Quote, he said, "We're going to make it swift. We're going to make it strong. We're going to hold them accountable. Figure it out because you don't want us to figure it out for you." And Jerry Nadler added to that, "Let's just see what happens if I pressure them." Is this worrying to you that the people that are governing their content moderation are influenced by congressmen? Ariel, what do you think? Is that like a skirt around the First Amendment, or what's your thoughts?
I think that anybody that has power is going to try to control more. That's just the fact, right? That happens throughout history. It worries me when people use that power to silence people. Like that's like that's the concept of this panel, right?
Yeah.
I think that I do agree partially with what he's saying. I understand where he's coming from with Stephen, and I think that if you do have your own platform, yes, you can moderate content in a way because if there's like pornography or something, you don't want that, yes. But I also think people are taking that to the extreme and making it political, and just because they don't like something, they're removing that. I don't think that's a healthy way for this country to be going.
Do you feel like the government has an undue influence on what Facebook is doing?
Oh yeah, I do. I think this is just me personally, but I think that it's fairly obvious to me that Facebook has some kind of secret agreement, whatever, I don't know, with the Democratic Party, because and YouTube too. I speak from personal experience. I know that until I came out, I was posting the same content for 10 years on YouTube. Sexual education. Until I came out as leaving the left and being a non-leftist, then they started banning me and restricting me. So to me, that's my experience of what you're saying. And I don't think, obviously, I'm biased, but I don't think that's okay.
What was the reason? Did they say that you were causing harm? I mean, is it the second
They said it
principle?
was because of my sexually explicit content, but I've been posting that same content for 10 years. So to me, it's okay, they don't like what I'm saying now.
Okay. What about you, Stephen?
But yeah, I do think it's because that's to me, it's too obvious. It was too obvious to me that this is why it was happening.
Right. So, Stephen, what do you think? If there's a link between the government, senators pushing these guys, doesn't that not apply? Isn't that the government using abridging the First Amendment in the wrong way?
I mean, I think it would depend on what they're pushing for or what the implication is. If the implication is that if this behavior is going on that leads to some sort of harm and we're going to legislate a new law or we're going to enforce a law in the book about it, that's probably fine. That's what Congress is there for. But if it's something like we're pressuring you to censor certain political narratives or whatever, then that's probably not okay. I will say though, again, a platform has the right, even if they want to ban, Republicans or Democrats on their platform, it's within their right to do so as a social media platform.
Yeah,
now,
and
pressure,
I agree with you.
Sure.
I don't think it's good, but I think that by law they should be able to.
Sure,
I
agree 100% with that.
I don't think it's a good thing for the country, though.
Depending on the platform, censoring of like conservative speech or whatever online, it sucks because it makes it more boring for me because I like to shout at people and I don't have as many people shout at
Do you
online
think
anymore.
230 is fine the way it is? You think 230 is fine the way it is? No changes?
I don't think 230 is fine. I think 230 is essential for the internet to function the way that it does. Without 230 written as is, you lose. Like the new world going forward is every single platform would have to moderate every single comment posted, knowing that they might get in trouble for, like, the reason why 230 came about was that when certain platforms were moderating their content, the idea was that, well, hold on, if you're going to ban some stuff and not other stuff, you're basically tacitly approving of other stuff that's being posted, so we can sue you for that. And so people were starting to take websites to court for stuff that their users had posted on the site. Yeah. If I posted defamatory content of anybody on this stage, you shouldn't be able to sue the platform that I posted on. You should sue me for it, right? That's the essential protection that 230 provides so that websites can continue to exist while allowing user-generated content to flourish on their sites.
Well, the difference between the two things is whether it's a provider or a publisher. And there are a lot of things that Facebook does that make it a publisher. It is not specifically just a provider. The algorithmic way that they sort content, they prioritize certain types of content, they push certain types of content, and whether it's because of a political agenda or because it's the content that makes them more money, and I understand that that's probably something that is built in. It is going to be a contradiction that you're not going to be able to get rid of anytime soon. But in a lot of cases, Facebook is acting as a publisher rather than a provider.
So this is just not true. So people have tried to stretch. Well, I'm about to answer that. So people have tried to stretch this idea that if you have an algorithm that shows certain information, or if you do like a fact check, or if you moderate certain content, that this makes you a publisher. It is very clear, like, a publisher is somebody that publishes information. So if Facebook were to start writing articles, or if Twitter were to start writing articles and they were pushing these or whatever, then those 230 live...
What's an op-ed page?
What?
What is an op-ed page in a newspaper? Does New York Times, like Mr. New York Times, write everything there? Or do other people do it?
An op-ed page, my understanding is that on that, you would be liable for that, but that's because you're publishing what's on the op-ed page. You're like approaching a writer and you're saying, we're going to hire you or pay you for this like op-ed, and we're going to publish it in our magazine. Now,
hiring
Twitter,
and paying is irrelevant.
If Twitter paying is essential. It might be
no, it is not.
Depending on what we're talking.
Absolutely not.
Do you understand that there is a difference between a newspaper that solicits op-eds from people versus a platform where any user more or less can sign up and generate content?
He said hiring and pay is irrelevant.
Yeah, hiring and pay is irrelevant. And Facebook is soliciting content from us, sorting it and putting it out based on their own preferences. An algorithm.
Daily Kos, for example, you didn't have to be it was like a blog. It was just a very sophisticated blog before it became what it became. So, like, no, hiring and pay is relevant, but Daily Kos could still be sued. Huh? Yeah, you see the difference?
My understanding is that if you have a website where any person can just submit content willy-nilly, if it's like some WordPress site, some blog or whatever, like Medium, for instance, you can't sue Medium for somebody that writes an article on Medium, because Medium is not like the publisher, it's just a distribution platform for that article. Now, even if you've got an algorithm that sorts stuff, like you might like this, you might like that, or even if you ban stuff like we don't want this, we don't like that, that still doesn't make them a publisher of the information. They're just a content distribution network.
Does it
change? It's a CDN that somebody uses for user-generated content to show up on their website. The content all comes from people, not endemic to the company.
So, we don't know if Medium could be sued. Maybe they could. We don't know. Like, honestly,
we don't know what?
We don't know if Medium can or can't be sued. No one has ever attempted to, because
we do know because
they don't arbitrarily remove people's information just because it doesn't agree with a certain political agenda. To my knowledge, I've never heard any complaints about
removing
that.
information that doesn't agree with the political agenda doesn't mean you lose your Section 230 protections.
Oh my God,
you've let me finish a single thing, so I have very little sympathy for you at this point.
Bro,
what do you want to say, Niko?
Let me finish talking. I'll just let you pontificate for a fucking hour as usual. Let me talk.
Oh yeah, 1 hour, man.
Anyway. So, like I was saying, we don't know that about Medium. But
we do know that. That's wrong.
Then we can get to the actual precedent that has been set, because people are like, oh, these private platforms like Twitter or Facebook have the ability to just remove politicians whenever they feel like it. Actually, the courts say otherwise, because Trump couldn't even ban someone because he is technically a public figure, and they considered it to be a public forum. They couldn't even. So if you obviously,
no, that's wrong. That's not even true.
Hold on, let me finish talking, Mr. Judge. Like, I didn't know you were a damn federal judge.
I don't have to judge.
Okay, then anyway, let me finish talking. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Anyway, so just from the precedent that's already been set by the court, they said, and it was like it was a leftist decision. Like, Democrats were like, you can't block us, ha ha.
Anytime they don't agree.
Hold on, let me finish.
Okay.
Jesus Christ,
how many dumb things can you say? It's like a fucking machine gun.
This is not your Twitch stream. Chill.
All right, we got to get to it.
Anyway,
it is his Twitch stream.
When
actually.
Trump got banned from Twitter, that was probably the most egregious form of censorship that we had ever seen, because literally the outcome of an election could or could not have been affected by it. When you are talking about I mean, because this is America, right? So if the outcome of our election is affected by, which that means you're affecting the outcome of the geopolitical arena all over the world. And there is literally no accountability, ironically, in the same country where everybody's talking about election interference all the time.
But so could a movie, right?
Yeah, but you could, if the movie influences it, you have a choice whether or not you want to engage with that content. Like, they don't funnel it to you. They don't force you to go there. But if I have a business, if I have like my political opinion,
you to use Twitter,
if
Facebook?
I don't,
Okay, so Facebook
when
is
you
right.
have a business that is reliant on Twitter and Facebook because they are, okay, we just went through this. Okay, so once again, unlimited funding. There is no
There is no unlimited funding from the government. I don't think you know what funding or unlimited means. I don't think you know what either of those words
because
mean.
you don't like the logic that's about to come doesn't mean
It's
you can
not
cut it
about
off.
logic.
Okay,
You don't know what a publicly traded company is. You don't know what capital is. You don't know what funding means. You don't know what unlimited means.
We're already at the unlimited funding. Like,
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. So when
Facebook is a
unlimited
utility. It's
funding-
like roads, right? So he's saying, like,
Facebook's not regulated like utility, if that's what you're asking.
right, but no, but he's making the argument that Facebook is essential to launch a business in the modern world. In the many ways, like roads, like to restrict a business access to roads, we all agree that's BS.
You literally can't
But
find
is
competition.
Facebook is it as essential as roads?
I don't disagree that these platforms have a lot of power. So I have questions about how antitrust works in the United States. A really good question, in my opinion, is why the fuck was Facebook allowed to buy Instagram? That shit is crazy to me. I think that if you want to attack some of these larger social media platforms from an antitrust perspective, that is absolutely legitimate.
And then what?
Because it is really hard to start. Let's say that you're banned from Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. What public voice do you have, right? You're not on fucking Gap.
What?
No offense, I'm sorry, but like, right?
We
You're completely
agree.
fucked. I absolutely agree. But you have to hit this from an angle that makes sense, not this crazy shit about how they have
An
unlimited
angle that-
funding from the government
Hold
and blah,
up,
blah,
hold
blah,
up.
blah, blah,
So
and all the
the
made-up
antitrust
conspiracy
laws that are already in
nonsense.
place
What you
that should
have
be
to
preventing
say-
these
what you
platforms
have
from
to
doing
say
this,
is-
because they're
you have to
private,
say we
they're
need to look
literally
at the way our
making deals
antitrust
that
works in the
control the
United
outcome.
States.
Do you agree?
And then you attack it from that angle.
Nico, you gotta hang
Billions
out.
of views, and you're like, let's affect the antitrust laws. Well, if you reform the antitrust laws, Destiny, do you know it's going to completely and utterly destroy how we battle monopolies now? You see how fucking ridiculous that
But no,
sounds?
Destiny just
Why don't
said
we actually
that
just-
Facebook shouldn't have been able to buy Instagram.
Yeah, but that's my point. He's like, we should then refund the antitrust laws to make sure that can't happen. But if you reform it, oh my God, then we can't handle antitrust issues like we handle them now. Like, no, that sounds ridiculous. You can, I was about to
You
say
agree
something very
on this.
vulgar, but basically you can you can walk and chew gum at the same time. You
It's
can
not about
reform
walking and chewing gum
230
at the same
while
time. You're pointing to
while
things and calling them
protecting the
problems when they're not
things-
problems.
You can reform 230 while protecting the things that we
Okay, what do you want? What do you want to do to
What is it
230?
230 for reform you want?
What specifically?
One, it's either one of two things. You either reform 230 or you admit that platforms like Facebook and Twitter no
How
longer
would you
fall.
reform
Hold on,
230?
let me fucking finish. Oh my
Every
God.
time
shut
they
the
ramble,
fuck
it's
up.
because they don't have
Bro,
shit to
shut
say.
up.
Every fucking
Jesus
time.
Christ.
It's like, it's the same
Dog,
script. Holy
if
shit.
You like, okay, you know what?
But one at a time. No, we have to dissect the 430.
Here's your pen. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, Peter.
It's
what do
fine.
you want to do
have
to
nothing
230?
to say. You can get mad all you want.
You're
I'm
a
sorry
surgeon.
that you have to actually answer a question for once in your fucking life. It's fine. Like, we can sit here and we can cry all day about, like, oh, 230 unfair, blah, 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 blah. Tell us how you'd reform it. Oh, there you go. Go ahead. Pick it up.
Like I
Go ahead, let us hear it.
So like I was saying, I want to reform. You can reform it by, one, protecting the benefits that we have now, but make sure that if a company decides to act like a publisher like Facebook and Twitter have done in situations especially that affect the outcome of our political atmosphere, like, you can literally legislate it. It'll go through the committee process. They'll figure it out, make sure it works. Who will be affected? Who could be positively affected? Who could be negatively affected? They go through a process. I don't know if you heard about it, but that's what Congress does.
What does it mean to
And
act
it's-
like a
hold
publisher?
on. Oh my
Okay.
God, bro. Just 5 fucking seconds, bro. Anyway, once we get to that, when we get to that point, we can do a breakdown of what's the best way to ensure that, one, they're not doing it, but even if we can't control them for doing it, make sure that if you're removing someone's literal brand, business, whatever, that you have to go through the same due process as everybody else. But right now they're being shielded from due process and accountability on their behalf, and then we're not getting any
So
due
how
process when we
do
get
we
screwed.
get around that? Peter, how would you, if you're a surgeon, what do you do to 230?
Well, for me, like, these are the two options. Either you recognize that Facebook, Twitter, and all these things are acting as publishers and not as ISPs. Like, this law is actually designed around the relationship an ISP has with the customer as opposed to just websites. It's applied to websites because websites ostensibly act in at least somewhat neutral way. I think that has been overstepped, and we can either recognize that and apply 230 to them as it exists now, or 230 needs to be amended in order to recognize that.
But how?
How? I can't give you exact wording. I'm not.
Well, what does it mean to be a publisher? That's what I want to know. Because we're saying if you're going to act as a publisher, what does that mean to be a publisher?
I thought you were the expert on 230. It tells you in the.
What?
I thought you were the expert.
Okay, what does it mean to be a publisher?
230
Ariel?
is like
Ariel.
27 words. What do you mean? It doesn't tell you in there what it means to be a publisher.
All right.
He literally just read it. Yeah.
Ariel, what's it mean to be a publisher?
I think that's the issue that this debate is having. I think both people are explaining it differently.
No.
Now, is being a publisher simply posting something online, or is it also? Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Or is it controlling what's being seen in the world? I think there's a case for both. I think both are equally as important because you could post things like just. I mean, it happens with the algorithm with YouTube all the time. If they don't like what we're saying, they restrict us.
Sure.
And I think that is, in essence, also being a publisher because you are controlling what is being seen.
Sure. Like Stephen points out that like the New York Times op-ed's clearly like that's publishing practice, right? But what about on your content if you say something like trans women aren't women, or you said something different about COVID and they said this article is misleading? Like, is that publishing?
I don't think that's publishing. I think it's
editorial content.
I think it's editing. I think it's editing, and I think people can interpret that as publishing. I think it's all interpretation. I think everyone's going to interpret it differently. That's the issue. That's why we have debates about this, right?
What do you think, Stephen? Is that?
I think this is one of those things that seems plainly obvious unless you're taking a hardcore political bend to it. If you have a platform and users are supplying all of the content to that platform, you have a right to moderate it as you see fit. If you want to like force people or attach like a not safe for work or not safe for life link, if you want to say warning, like we think this contains bad bit or whatever, or you want to say that like this violates whatever rule or whatever, you have the right to do that. That doesn't mean that you are suddenly like creating and publishing content on your platform. I think there's case law to support this. The EFF has a huge write-up on how they feel about 230, and a whole bunch of other institutions have signed on. People like Medium have signed on to support 230, written as is well. I mean, like the idea that just because you engage in some moderation, or if you want a front page like the cutest dog pic of the day, you've become an editor or a publisher. If we were to take that point of view, what we're essentially restricting is every single platform has to just show all of their content in a straight line with like no other like flourishes or whatever. Otherwise, you're engaging in publishing or editorializing.
Don't you have to weigh the benefits and
I
think he makes a lot of sense in that with that point
Go ahead.
because you are also a business and you want to make sure your business is doing the best that it can, and if that means putting certain content first because that's going to get the best, the more clicks or keep people on the site for longer, that makes sense, and I get why YouTube does that as well. I just think it's reached a point where, to me, it would be considered censorship and not no longer. I think just for me, their line has been crossed, but I understand. I
just don't like the word censorship because like.
Come up with a better word then.
Well, the problem is
I'll use that word.
The problem is that contextually, these mean very different things, right? If I'm not allowed to call my dad the F word, if I'm a 9-year-old at my house, I'm being censored by my parents. That is true. Is it good or bad? It's probably okay. If you're not allowed to say crazy stuff in a classroom, if you're like in 5th grade, you're not allowed to scream swear. That's censorship, right? If I'm on a private company, if I were to start screaming at you really big obscenities, eventually I imagine you'd have me removed from the stage, right? That's a form of censorship. Now, if the government were to craft legislation that was abridging my right to freedom of speech, that's also censorship. One of these is really, really, really bad, and the other 3 examples are probably okay things that ought to be protected in society.
So the main issue I feel like is that we're losing the context of is like the consequences of the inconsistent application of punishment and censorship and removal of people. It's one thing if I saw like, CNN or MSNBC getting the same type of treatment as maybe an Alex Jones, for example, probably wouldn't be all that concerned. I'm like, well, shit, man, that's just the way it happens sometimes. I would still have a problem with it because I'm a free speech absolutist, but it would be hard for me to find an argument that says they're treating people unfairly and it seems to be based on a political agenda. We all sat through Russiagate. I think everybody was there for that, where they lied, not once, not twice, but for years. It cost people jobs, friendships, breakdowns in relationships, and it turned out to all be complete and total bullshit. And if you go and look up, and you see some of the articles that came out, they were like, they had the CNN employees that got caught saying, yeah, this is BS. Nobody actually believes this. They were doing it for money. That's what their claim was. And the moment that became an issue, Like, that was everybody's moment to step back, like, wow. So hold up. Not only were they lying, not only were they full of it, but it was for money, and they weren't punished for it. There is no incentive for them to then tell the truth at any point because they know that they will always be able to benefit from Twitter, from Facebook, and from the government as long as the right people are in power and they're doing what the government wants. So you now have this vicious cycle of fuckery that no one is being held accounted for because they know whatever applies to you doesn't apply to me as long as I keep playing the people who are in power, as long as I keep playing their game. That's how we're in the shit we're in right now because of the selective accountability. If I can be held more accountable
what's
than
the accountability?
That's
like,
a
Peter,
problem.
What would you want? What would you want, like, if there's accountability for these people? Like, what is that? What's that look like?
I mean, you can see, if you think that one of these companies has engaged in behavior that is like illegal or malicious, and you can prove that in a court of law, you can take them to court and sue them.
Oh, word.
CNN has gotten sued. Oh my God, I'm sorry. Did I just interrupt your interruption with my answer to his question? I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Yeah, so you can take CNN to court if you feel like they've published a story that's wrong. There was a really popular story like 4 or 5 years ago. I'm sure everybody in here saw it. It was like some white high school kids that were outside, and there were, I think, Nation of Islam people. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that family took CNN to court, and they got a decent settlement out of it, which they should have because that whole story was bullshit.
And
the way that it was edited
what does that have to do with
absolutely.
Facebook?
What is that?
I just said CNN.
I can walk you through it. No, that's fine. If we want to spend the
He's
time.
talking about accountability.
So you said there was no accountability.
No. What I said was,
showing to you is that if you take somebody into court and sue them, some people would call that accountability.
Facebook cannot. What are you talking about?
We're not
having the same conversation.
The only ones winning when we're talking over each other is like the echo. So go ahead. You were gonna summarize.
No, I was just gonna say he's talking about accountability. I think that is one way of people being held accountable. I don't think necessarily it needs to. I don't think we need to start suing people to be held accountable, though.
We're talking about
have those people be
we're
held
talking about
accountable.
social media platforms in the inconsistent application of accountability.
Yes.
Like that's so I don't know what you're talking about. I already
Because
said
you brought up CNN.
We already know
You brought up CNN. That's not a social media platform.
Because I said on these platforms, on YouTube, which is owned by Google, which is owned by the CIA. On Facebook,
what the fuck?
Right, but it literally is, bro. You can just look the shit up.
Well,
it's
no,
not
for
complicated to find.
For example,
you think Google is owned? You think Google is owned by the
look,
CIA?
Bro, I'm not gonna do your homework for you. You should have did before you got here.
But
anyway,
what I think he's trying to say
like
is
a 51%
Nick Sandman
majority stake, or what is
successfully
it?
sued CNN for libel. Nick Sandman successfully sued CNN for libel. So he's saying accountability is there are methods for this.
Suing CNN for libel isn't CNN being treated like you or I on Facebook or Twitter, which are two of the most powerful platforms in the world that have unlimited sources of
I have a good way of, in my opinion, holding people accountable. I think that people like Facebook, or like businesses and companies like Facebook or Twitter or whatever, should be honest and upfront about their political biases. I think that's one way to do it, because then going in and you're going on these websites, you know that their feed might be tailored a little bit more to people left-leaning or right-leaning. And I think that the Daily Wire does that. They literally say, we are a conservative news source. So people know going in that they're going to be...
But those are all publishers, right? And they all can be held accountable to a degree, Facebook and Twitter. Everything that you're saying is true, but then Facebook will turn around and say, we're not publishers. What are you talking about?
All right, so take an example.
Yeah.
So on Section 230, to modify that, like I haven't gotten a ton of specifics, but Vivek Ramashay, I maybe butchered his name, the guy that wrote Woke Inc. What he says to do on Section 30 or 230 is to guide it by the First Amendment. So they would not get liability anytime they're outside of the bounds of the First Amendment. So they can censor content, for example, that the First Amendment doesn't protect, which would be like your child pornography, threats of violence, libel, and all of that. But everything else, they would have to do in the spirit. Or they could choose to be a publisher and lose the liability. What do you think about that?
It seems weird. It's like paradoxical. Enforcing that a business follows the First Amendment is contrary to the purpose of the First Amendment. This is the reason why anytime you participate in any private business, if you go into any restaurant, if you go into any private anything, there's always that line on the bottom of, we reserve the right to remove you for whatever reason we see fit. Part of your ability to run a private business in the United States is that you can exercise your private level of discretion in any way you want, as long as it doesn't move contrary to, like, protected classes, for instance.
Bro, I'm gonna lie, that's not like the same argument that was made for slavery.
That's a reason. Was I interrupting your
thoughts again? That's morally bad.
Backstage,
violates the Constitution
as long as you're private. If you're a private company, it's cool.
Niko.
That's exactly what that's that. Yes, welcome to the First Amendment. That's exactly how it works. The First Amendment does not apply to private enterprise. That's not what the First Amendment is.
People make arguments where they pretend as if they could undermine the First Amendment, and then they usually, if everything goes well, get crushed in court later and sued for it.
Okay, so Peter brings up a restaurant is not the same as Facebook. So
not the same. You're talking
would a
about
limit?
patrons.
What about a company-sized liability limit that you get protection if you're small enough, but if you're big enough, different rules apply?
This is like an interesting argument. So again, though, the problem is like there's either two things going on here. Either one, in my opinion, we should be talking about antitrust law, which I think there are way more better conversations to have. Or two, you're essentially saying that once a company grows to a certain size, there's like a whole other set of like constitutional provisions that come in to moderate or guide that company. I mean, you could, but that gets into like a whole lot of really weird.
It's not a constitutional provision. It's a law. It's just a law. Section 230 is a law.
I would also argue that
I thought you were mentioning more specifically like the First Amendment stuff.
I'd also argue that quantitatively is not necessarily a good way to figure this out. I think it's really like when you look at Facebook or Twitter or any of that, there's a tiny percentage of posts that they spend their time pushing and boosting or moderating for that matter. I think it's really, are they acting in a manner that like they are very, very heavily curating their site in terms of what they boost.
I have a very possibly, I don't know if this makes complete sense, but to me, I think the argument can like be summed up in like as book burning. Like people are allowed to publish, but then people are denying those publishings to be seen, right? Is that kind of where we're at? Is that what both of you are saying? Yes, people are allowed to publish on Facebook, but is Facebook also becoming a publisher?
They do.
Yeah. Like that would be the book burning, right? Yeah, they allowed them to produce the books, but they're also burning them, right? So they're also hiding some information from being seen. Yeah, is that technically a publisher? I don't know how to answer that. I don't think I don't know if any of us do.
If you are curating information and or what just came out recently, even blue checks, right, on Facebook, they got caught whitelisting certain celebrities and certain political figures and basically blacklisting others. Like, once again, in the grand scheme, what is that actually doing? That is influencing not only political narratives, but social narratives as well, and it is disallowing open discourse, which is fine if you're CNN or MSNBC or Fox News. Because once again, if somebody is allowed to lie, like outright lie about me on CNN and MSNBC, if somebody does that, I can sue them, and I have a pretty good chance of winning. If I supposedly pushed a lie about Hunter Biden, which is kind of hard to lie about that guy, but hell, fuck that. Even if I tell the truth about Hunter Biden, I can get banned off of Facebook.
So you're saying like these big companies can't be political? Is that your argument?
If I can push a lie about Hunter Biden and get removed, but then Hunter Biden can then log on Facebook, push a lie about me, and nothing happens, there is a problem. And that's what we have seen done consistently over and over and over again. And we keep getting into the weeds about, what about antitrust? Like, there is no difference between addressing antitrust laws in 230s. Maybe we have two different methods of dealing with the issue. Hold on, let me finish. Yeah. We have two different methods of dealing with the issue, and that's fine. We can have those differences. But we both agree that this is inherently a problem. And what I am telling you is the root of the problem is, which is something that you keep ignoring conveniently, is the fact that you're having unlimited funding from the government, prop up countries where there are, companies where there are no competition for that, and then there are real life consequences that are felt because of the government funding that you can't compete.
So too much funding.
There's one other person on the stage that would have a good solution for this.
Right. I would say, how will antitrust solve the problem? Because I think what you're saying is let's solve it. How does antitrust solve it?
So the only way to solve the problem the way that you're addressing it is like the Marxist solution, which is you're saying that private companies should have some greater obligation to their public operation. If that's the case, then they need to be owned and held publicly by the government, and then they need to be regulated in that way as a utility. That's the ultimate end goal of what you are pushing for.
You can't get away with shit you shouldn't be getting away with if you did all your crimes.
Is it like a prop bet that he took? How many times did he come out?
What's the CIA for? What is the CIA for?
How many times does the CIA
like, hey guys, let's let you know
how many shares does the CIA own of Facebook? How many shares does the CIA own of Google?
Before we come and overthrow you. No. If you're doing
it like the CIA hedge fund or what?
We're officially measuring.
Does Biden go down to the New York Stock Exchange and execute these trades, or does he send his son down to do it?
You're not going to do your dirt out in the open. When you have congressmen threatening Amazon, threatening different companies, if you even
gotta let him make the argument.
Trump, I didn't get to finish making my argument. When you
stopped talking, you weren't done?
Finish, bro.
Okay, I'm so
I'll
sorry.
let you say all the dumb shit that you wanted to say. Let me finish. So like I was saying, when you have politicians
To be clear, you didn't
who
let me finish
go
saying
on
anything, but-
Twitter
That's where we're
and
at.
then threaten, say, we will use our legislative power to force you to do something if you don't do it yourself, and then without
he's stuck on
any
a replay.
I get the
hold on.
argument.
We're looping through
Without
the
any
same argument.
process, they
Nico,
then
we
get
gotta-
to remove
we
the
gotta
president.
finish this argument.
Parler
He's
gets
like
removed
halfway
from
through.
app stores, and then no one gets held accountable when we find out, oh shit, maybe we did this the wrong way. Like, politicians shouldn't be able to fucking skip steps in the legislative process and have presidents removed from platforms. That is insanity. There's no justification for that. And why did they get away with it? Because the government is who is allowing the shit to happen.
Destiny.
And as long as you do what the government wants, who no one trusts, then you won't be held accountable.
Nico, we're going to
for
pull the
it.
mic in a second. Like, seriously, you finished the argument about your antitrust. How does antitrust? So first, you got the argument that unless the marketing control. So how does antitrust fix it? Finish your argument.
I mean, like, so I think that you can look at the amount of market share that a certain company owns in an area, and if it's too great, then I think the company needs to be broken up. Now, the problem is I think people try to argue like how broad the areas should be. So I don't quote me on this, but when Facebook took over Instagram, they were trying to make an argument that like, well, we occupy totally different spaces. It's not similar at all, so that's why we should be allowed to acquire them. So, but I think there's like a point to be made that if you want to do, if you want to start a company of some kind and you're not allowed to list yourself on Facebook, you could suffer like a real material harm by just not having access to that one platform. If that's the case, that there are no competitors that are adequate to counter that single platform, I mean, if antitrust laws exist for any reason, I feel like that would be the reason they exist, right? That if I get banned off one place, I have no access to this entire market. That seems like a good place
So the
to
obvious
make
example that at least comes to my mind is in Parler, right? So Parler comes, they get big enough, and immediately they're delisted off Google Play and the Apple Store, and they lose Amazon Web Services. So it's now I guess you got to create your own internet, right? Because it was before kind of create your own social media. Does your antitrust solution stop what would have happened to Parler?
Well, so the weird thing is that we're getting into we're testing the limits of how like private enterprise could be allowed to work, because cancel culture has reached the point to where like you want to try to like it used to be a long time ago that they would just try to get you banned from one social media platform. Now they want to get you banned from every social media platform. Now they might want to get you banned from social media platforms and like having a domain name and get your the people that host your shit banned. Like it wouldn't surprise me if at some point they try to get you banned from like getting apartment people to like lease you an apartment because they don't like you so much, right? I think
They
this
do
is
that.
the problem.
It's already a thing.
Now
I
the
can-
problem
I
is
can
that
vouch
the
they do
problem
that.
is that all of these things are technically protected like First Amendment rights, but what we're hitting on is like these really weird limits of like how effective is capitalism at allocating resources in society, and then people falling through in that. Because, and here's the thing that nobody wants to hear. The reason why these platforms are so big is because everybody wants them that way. Every single person in here probably has some highly integrated Google device or Apple device where they've got like AirPods that connect to their phone, that connects to their computer, that connects to their fucking email, that connects to their school, that connects to their fucking car.
I loved
single thing in their
MySpace.
life.
I was perfectly fine
When
with
everybody
MySpace.
is obsessed with that level of vertical and sometimes horizontal integration, you're going to see these companies get as big as they are.
Yeah.
And that's a problem that like it needs to be regulated. But Niko said something correct earlier, which is that it's really hard to regulate it. But the problem is it's not hard to regulate it because the government is corrupt and bought out and blah, blah, blah.
I didn't say
The
it was
problem is
hard
that
to
it's hard to
regulate. I didn't say it was hard
regulate.
to
The
regulate.
problem is that it's hard to regulate it because people sometimes don't really know what they want. Another great example is people talk about their invasion of privacy all the time. Our privacy is being invaded. Our privacy is being invaded. Motherfucker, you can like dox somebody by looking at one Reddit post. They're talking about like, oh, like my name is like, you know, Peter Thomas and here's my Facebook account. It's like, bro, you post everything about yourself online. You use all of these services. You give all your information out, but that's because they like the convenience that they get from utilizing these products. So yeah, I agree that these situations are hard to regulate, but it's because people all the time don't know what they want as well. It's really complicated to figure out like how big should a company be, how much reach should it have, because how much convenience are we willing to get in exchange for some of our
Can I
privacy,
respond,
safety,
Brian?
freedom?
All right, go ahead.
Like, I feel like that's just kind of like insulting people by saying, oh, they don't know what they want. No, people like don't want to be fucking censored. People on eBay didn't want to like get sideswiped out of literally nowhere by unlimited funding to Amazon and Jeff Bezos, which is once again what allowed Jeff Bezos to become the richest man in the world after having a failed business model. Like people who are working at Yahoo and were having the time of their life and making cool commercials, everybody remembers those. Like there was a time where you couldn't even imagine a world where Yahoo wasn't the #1 search engine, and then out of nowhere, once again, Google just, oh man, we just have a better business model by doing the exact same thing as you do, but worse at first. They weren't even as good as Yahoo. But somehow they also ended up making Google Maps because that was also for the government, and that's why most of the world doesn't even allow Google Maps because CIA just uses it to spy on people.
Most of the
and
world?
Hold on, let me finish, please.
Have you ever been to another country before? What?
Yeah, they don't
But why
allow
wouldn't
Google
antitrust
Maps.
help?
Wait, which country?
Have you ever been to a country that isn't in fucking Europe?
So
Yeah, sure. I've been to New Zealand. I've been to Taiwan. I've been to, yeah, of course. What do you mean? South Korea? These.
Bro. What? Anyway, so like I was saying.
But how does antitrust would help? He was saying that Facebook shouldn't have been allowed to buy Instagram. That would be part of the problem. That decentralizes it more.
Yeah,
why
then
are
we
you so
have to
opposed?
get to. See, that's the problem. We keep talking about part of the problem. I've already given you the root of the problem. Why was Facebook allowed to buy Instagram?
Okay, but the root.
Because the government allowed them to.
All right, but
Because it served their interests.
That requires us
and
to
who has benefited the most from all of these mergers?
But what
If you just look at the election.
But what can you agree on? Other than the root
agree
is so
with the
deep in your
antitrust.
thing. We have to tear it all down.
I'm completely
I
honest.
would
hear where
say
the
our
unlimited funding
antitrust
comes from.
laws
That's
have
what
been
I'm curious
shit
about
for
right
a
now.
while. Once we saw the 96 communications bill go through, and then all of radio and all the companies got basically bought up by the major, four or five companies. We knew then our antitrust laws no longer work, but somehow they just keep getting allowed to be played. And so what basically Destiny is asking us is, hey, everybody, trust your government to do the right thing.
Well,
How's that working out for everybody so far?
I mean, to be fair, he seems distrustful of the big companies
But then-
buying up and getting too big.
I just don't like
But-
it. People don't recognize where the problems come from. If you don't like the media, if you don't like big comment, I'm sorry, but it's a mirror. It's a reflection of what the citizens want. It absolutely
No, it's not.
is.
It's not true.
It absolutely
Absolutely
is.
not true.
Who the
You can
fuck
get as mad
believes
as you
that?
want about it. We
Bro,
live
you
in a
live in like a
democratically elected
fantasy
society.
world that
People
you-
keep electing these
I need you
politicians.
to get out for
That's
Twitch
what
and
you're
go
gonna
talk
get.
to people. Because people tell you what they want if you go talk to them. They don't want to be censored. Motherfuckers did not like Joe Biden. And somehow he is in power, right? I don't give a damn who you were. He was the #1 target on the debate stage for a reason. Because he was the most vulnerable, because no one liked him. Nobody. But somehow, some way, he becomes the president anyway. Or everybody by the end of the George Bush
So wait,
administration
are we
didn't like
doing like
George
election
Bush.
was linked
And
to,
then
are you-
somehow, some way, he gets paraded back in front of us. And
Is
everybody's
there
like,
like a-
oh
is
my
there a-
God.
is there a single-
Actually,
is there a single
I
conspiracy
do
you
kind
don't
of like
believe in?
George Bush
Like-
now. We get told what we wanted through
You
propaganda.
gotta
We
let
know
him-
this. Well, you gotta let me
You can't
finish the
play
damn
tennis
thought.
with one person, man. You
I
gotta
just want to
let
finish
him
my
back
thought.
in.
I let them finish their thoughts.
I
wanna
love
be able to
that
finish my thoughts.
Biden won and stole the election with a Republican
I'm not
government,
talking about
with
stealing
Republican
the
federal
election. That's
judges,
not what I'm talking
with
about.
Republicans looking at every step of the way. Somehow he was able to get through
You're
it,
like the tennis guy that's running and hitting your own balls.
Well, shit,
Like,
I can
you
do
gotta-
that. I'm not good. But I'm not talking about stealing the election. I'm talking about, you're saying people do, they just don't know, they think, and then the government and the private institutions react to what people. No, we know, propaganda is a thing. Did you read about the 80s? Cold War?
Okay.
Nah?
But that sounds like an argument for censorship.
Why would that? No.
Because
no,
you're
no.
saying
When you don't agree
Because
with what
if I
propaganda
can
is.
then go out and tell the truth about that propaganda, I guarantee you, sit me
Okay,
in a
but
room with
what's
Destiny.
propaganda?
Sit me in a room with Destiny when he's spewing bullshit. I will tell you why it's bullshit, and you will know the right and correct way to go about solving issues. This is why we have these conversations.
So, if you could make one tweak, what would you do?
I don't want to
Just
mention
like
it,
one.
but Ariella?
Ariel.
Ariel. Okay. There was a suggestion that she hit on earlier that I think would be a really good thing. I don't know if you would legislate it, but at the very least we should hold everybody accountable to it. I think that when you remove anything from your platform, I think that the ban reason should be publicly stated. That's one thing that I would really, really, really like. There are some platforms that have done this. There was one Kickstarter or something, I think, where sometimes when they remove really charged content, even if you don't agree with it, they'll put a video out saying why they did it. I think that would be an awesome level of transparency so that if we can see stuff is getting removed, at least we know why it's getting removed.
And then we can make the decision if we want to continue supporting
Sure,
the platform.
exactly, yeah.
So, and then the way to get there would be how?
I don't know how I feel about legislating it, but it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. If that did go through legislatively, I don't think I could see it would be really abused or horrible. I think I'd be okay with that.
Okay.
If it was a thing where if you're a public platform, or not a public platform, but if you're a platform that allows users to post on it and you're going to remove content, at the very least you have to state the reason why.
Okay, but you'd prefer it to be more of a cultural push, but you're okay with legislation.
Culturally, we failed. So
All right.
there's a reason why these platforms are so big. Everybody wants to be where everybody else is, right? It's why cities are so big. Everybody wants to move where everybody else is. No offense, but nobody wants to post on Gab because that's not where all the people are posting. So people will say in one breath, I wish these companies were broken up, or I wish they weren't monopolies. But in the next breath, they want to be able to post and have 300 million users have access to their public messages.
Well, that's not totally true for Jangles. He lives in the sticks. Where do you, if you make one
It's
change?
actually a similar one to that. I think that they should have to publish how they are judging what they are doing in terms of content? How are they censoring content?
Yeah, that's what I said in the beginning.
Content?
Yeah.
If the model is something that is majority, like much more heavily weighted towards them promoting a small amount of the content, I think that should put them in a different place in terms of their relationship to Section 330.
Okay. Do you feel like they should be more open with their algorithms?
Yes, absolutely.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that would solve a lot of problems. And I don't agree with everything Ben Shapiro says, but he did say that he thinks the same thing. That's where I got the idea from. He says that his media companies, Daily Wire, says straight up, we are a conservative news source. So naturally, we're going to be a little bit more biased. And I understand that going in, okay, when I see these articles, I know that that's where their mindset's coming from. They're not claiming to be in the middle.
What does that look like, though?
I'm not sure. We're figuring that out as we go, I think.
But like
it could be like posting like this is your clear TOS, and then like you would like reference like this is banned because it violated 1 subsection 2A or whatever, right?
Okay. So you go, if you could change one thing, right? I don't know if we could go to the root, but if you could change one thing, what do you change?
I guess you could do the thing where you show why you banned them, but that's not going to change anything. It has to be the accountability. You have to hit people in their pockets for them to pay attention, or threaten them with losing their business.
What does that look like?
So in the case of, let's just say Facebook, for example, when they remove like Alex Jones, if they would have given a reason and then say, this is exactly how we got the community, this is what the community got, I say this is what he did in this specific instance, and that's what got him banned, and then it turned out that that wasn't true, and then Alex could take them to court for that ban, and they could actually feel it, like that would be, but they, obviously they can't, but if they actually were able to get hit in their pockets consistently and often for wrongful bans, that would solve.
So you want a penalty for wrongful bans?
Yeah.
But how do you determine then what's wrongful?
I mean, that's what a court of law is for, if they're doing their job.
Mr. Moderator. All right, we're going to have to start getting into our QA.
Okay.
Yeah. We can start the QA?
All right,
Okay,
start Q&A.
right. Anybody have any questions for any of our panelists?
All right, sorry.
You guys can go line up right up here.
For some reason,
Please try to keep it to one question if you can. Keep it nice and brief so everybody gets a chance.
So there were a lot of different reasons to go in and, I guess, regulate these companies. I think the big thing that we discussed was...
Yeah, you got to get really close to these things.
I think the big thing that we discussed was the publishers. So what would your bright line or standard be for considering someone a publisher or not? Because if you talk about like Facebook or something, you kind of would have to like go into their code and algorithm, and that's kind of like their own personal property. So like, how would you be able to determine that?
So like a more defined like idea of what a publisher is.
Somebody that like writes and contributes to their platform like in a meaningful, original way. So if you're writing your own tweets, you're writing your own articles and posting them or whatever, you're like publishing those articles.
That's a content creator, though. That's not a publisher.
What is the difference?
Well, does Penguin Books write all the book? Does they write? No, authors do. It's a publisher is the larger umbrella that all of these content creators.
That's getting the messages
out.
out.
You and me are technically content creators as well as anyone else who's tweeting. But here's the thing: if we had a TOS that outlined exactly what goes into that I think would be, because people who are getting banned off of things and they have something to do with the TOS, that, I mean, you at least can expect that type of a thing to happen. Let's say they violate, X rule on the TOS. Whereas if you also had this sort of unwritten set of rules where you're either promoted or demoted, or you're also subject to even disappearing. I've known people who have been disappeared off these platforms without any real violation of rules. They haven't had anything articulated to them. That, in my opinion, especially if it's the majority of what they do, like if it's a minority of what they do, I don't know. But if a large portion of their business model is pushing and demoting content based on whether or not it's in their interests, that to me says publisher rather than just provider.
Quick rebuttal.
Yeah, so I think there's a difference, because when you talk about a book publisher, it's not just user-generated content of like people that can sign to a site. There's usually like an implied relationship. Like if you're being published by a certain publisher, unless there are some open publishers out there, there's like some collaborative effort there where you've kind of like endorsed the message to some extent by being a publisher for a certain person.
Yeah, but when you push certain content and a large amount of content is just totally ignored by these standards, when you push certain content, you start acting in that way.
Yeah, but then the question is, like, should you not be allowed to ever do that if you're considered a publisher? Like, let's say I had a website that did dogs.
I think you should be, but I think you have to.
You have to have some
You have
liability.
to say. I think you have to say upfront. This is why we're not
Sure, that's fine.
promoting
That's okay.
these types of people.
Because, like, if I like a dog of the day post, like, am I held liable now? Because do I lose those protections because I'm favoring
so
some
before
pictures?
Facebook
No,
and Twitter publishers, the thing that made them different than like just a platform you post on is that New York Times allows and disallows content. And they edit and censor content on their website after it goes through a clearing process, and then you're likely going to be told why you weren't allowed to post that op-ed or that column. Whereas on Facebook, when they enter the game, it was post whatever you want. That's what you're allowed to do. But then when you get to the level of you can post and they can see your post, but we don't like what you're saying, so they can't see your post.
Okay.
So that's like it's you're behaving as a publisher while basically trying to undercut what a publisher, like what it has meant to be a publisher up until this point because of how elastic the laws have been.
All right, go ahead, Michael.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon.
Morning.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's the wrong time of day. It is, in fact, the afternoon. A lot of this debate seems to surround around issues of the First Amendment. How do we square the First Amendment with private property rights? I'm reminded of a debate we had in previous generations about something called the Fairness Doctrine, which was this doctrine which stipulated that radio had to cater to both sides of the political aisle in due fairness. And the number one people who argued against that were conservatives, saying that this was a violation of some property rights from these radio shows. Simultaneously, conservatives all over the country are trying to ban the teaching of critical race theory in classrooms. It seems like conservatives are the biggest pioneers of censorship, right? So how can I trust conservative voices, or maybe I should say any voices that are trying to repeal Section 230 to be neutral in the application of this and not to just build a safe space for conservatives?
So I think the question is, would the reinstantation, or whatever, if we put the Fairness Doctrine back, would that help it?
Well, the Fairness Doctrine isn't explicitly like they're required to show both sides of an issue. They're required to attempt to show more than just a simple.
Required to have parity.
Yeah. Well, no, sorry. Did I say fair use? I'm sorry. I meant Fairness Doctrine.
No, the Fairness Doctrine is you have to have parity.
Do you like the Fairness Doctrine?
No, that's fair use.
Did you guys like it? You want it?
I think
you want
that
it back?
the Fairness Doctrine was an inelegant solution for the problem that it was attempting to address, because it actually did not obligate dissident politics. It was just a mechanism that people could complain to the FCC if indeed they didn't agree with it, which meant that if there was nobody actually holding the station accountable, they weren't really required in any way.
So it didn't have any teeth?
Yeah.
It had teeth. You could be sued.
Do you guys like it, Fairness Doctrine?
I don't have strong opinions.
We would have to. So I would like it. You would have to strengthen it, because there was like Tulsi actually introduced legislation on it while she was running. And it was to strengthen it, and then because Obama was the one who actually repealed it.
Oh, I don't know what the language of the law was, but the idea was both sides.
It was what, 2014?
It sounds like a
when he did
garbage,
it?
but I don't know the implementation or how it was like.
It's like allowing propaganda where you don't have to have any parity, and obviously the parity isn't going to be perfect. But then once again, then you can take it to a court of law if you feel like it isn't good enough, and then hash it out in court. We get all the discovery in the documents, and now the people can then be a fair judge, and hopefully, if you do need to be held accountable, you can.
All right. So next question.
How's it going, y'all? Niko, I think you mentioned earlier that the banning of Trump off of Twitter had like major geopolitical implications. Do you believe that there's a line, so for instance, if the president were posting child porn or inciting a riot or something like that, do you think that Twitter has the right to be able to ban people like him off the platform?
If the president was to post child pornography, that's against the law. And so you could then, I feel like that's a good question.
No, I think that's your example.
Yeah, no, well, because that's what he said. So like, but it's true, like, right? So if he's posting that, then he is literally breaking a law. Not only should he get banned, but then he should be taken to court, and they should figure out how many years they should be giving him, hopefully more than what they have been giving. But when you get to the situation, like, for example, inciting a riot. So now you're in a gray area, because what does that actually mean? Like, for example, is Travis Scott going to be charged for the 8 deaths that he may have caused last night at his concert? We don't know. But there are courts to have that discussion. In Twitter and Facebook, if I'm not mistaken, none of their executives are federal judge or a Supreme Court judge, and nor are they going to have a conversation, and nor is there going to be any due process applied. So if we want to see accountability there, then you go through the due process to make sure that it's being done the right way and publicly rather than behind closed doors.
Okay, next question.
Hey, my name is Sean. Hey. So my question, you're all on YouTube, I believe, and I have
Yeah, get close to that mic, man.
So I have a question about, in particular, in regards to misinformation, disinformation. I haven't heard too much discussion about that tonight, but in particular, what YouTube content creators are kind of having to self-censorship, and the left and the right is being deplatformed. This is going both ways. You know, I think it may have been served, or someone has recently been banned for debunking misinformation about the vaccines, and he was just trying to, you know, follow the guidelines. But so, where do you think that these platforms are headed in terms? Are we going to be constantly self-censoring for the next 10, 20 years? Is there a solution that we can, that people can feel more comfortable talking about things that shouldn't necessarily be banned from discussions in like the open space?
I just actually got banned recently, last week, because I had quoted verbatim a mainstream media article about the vaccines. And I don't know if you all posted on YouTube, so you probably got the update, where they basically said that it actually isn't about, you can get banned, and it isn't about whether or not you're right or wrong anymore, or if it's factual or inaccurate. It's, does it disagree with the institutions that they trust, but more importantly, is it the consensus? And so now you have obviously so much that's left up to so much interpretation that we couldn't possibly know what that even means anymore, because the institutions disagree with themselves every week, and the consensus is changing every week. So what they're now using is they're taking advantage of it and saying, well, we're just going to ban anyone who is talking about it. Because I like for example, I'm pretty sure me and the Surfs are not on the same page when it comes to mandates and the vaccinations, but somehow they'll receive the same punishment as me, and I don't think that they should be removed off of YouTube no more than I should. And so it's going to eventually leak over into everyone else. I'm a black man. I don't know if y'all know that. But we have this saying. Yeah, no, man, it's crazy.
I'm totally colorblind.
We have this saying in the black community that we're just the test subjects. Whatever happens to us will absolutely happen to everyone else eventually. And that's what happens. So.
What do you think over here, like in regards especially to like the medical discussions, because expert consensus in medicine is the lowest form of evidence, right? But it seems to be established with this restrictions around this to much higher credibility than it is. Like, is that a problem?
I don't have a good answer to this. I would say that, in my opinion, I think that misinformation is actually the biggest problem facing the Western world today, our inability to agree on what is factually true, because from that stems an infinite number of disagreements. We live in epistemically different worlds. Like, people believe totally different things, right? You know, some people believe that if you get vaccinated, you'll never get infected by anything and you're safe from every disease, and other people think that if you get vaccinated, you've got an 80% chance of getting myocarditis and dying. Like, the worlds that we live in are worlds apart right now. In terms of how do you address that, I mean,
what's worse? What's worse, the misinformation or potentially not allowing legit information to get top? Because the fringe theory could be the mainstream. So
it could be, but I mean,
that's why we believe in conspiracy theories. Because why aren't they allowing these other information? Why aren't they allowing this other information?
For a year and a half, 2 years, it turns out to be a Nobel Prize, like one of the safest drugs ever. They had all the studies in other countries.
Ivermectin is not a safe drug. Ivermectin is not a safe drug to treat.
It's one thing to worry about censoring misinformation. It's something else entirely to then restrict legitimate information from experts because they disagree with the narrative.
So real quick, ivermectin is not a safe drug to treat the coronavirus. That is not true. Number one.
All right, Doctor.
That's not true.
All right, Dr. Bonnell.
Let's move on. Number one.
That's fair, and then you wouldn't. I believe my body, my choice.
Wait, hold on. I'm actually curious. Do you know what ivermectin is prescribed for?
River blindness, parasites. It actually has been prescribed for COVID all over Florida. That's why everybody's moving there.
So what did it win the Nobel Prize for?
What did it win the Nobel Prize for? For treating for virus. Actually, it had multiple applications.
It was for antiparasitic infection.
Yeah.
So the idea that
do you know why it works for? I'm not having.
No, I do. Actually, yeah, go ahead. No, we can talk about this all you want.
My point is that there are certain studies, just like there are some studies that support the vaccines, that also supported that ivermectin. Yeah, even if it had minimal positive effect, it was far more safe and proven and tested over time, and people did not have that option where there wasn't a vaccine. And so if it could have saved someone's life, it didn't, because it was being banned based off of information being put out.
So ivermectin, we gotta go to the next question.
And the information that was considered to be on the fringe. That
I'm not going to get
Lancet.
We're gonna argue over the science of this.
That's not true.
My point is, are the consequences from suppressing potentially legitimate information could cost lives. That's
the problem is this misunderstanding that like we're gonna find truth on fucking YouTube when it comes to like medical information. Like that's chances
there are literally doctors on YouTube. What are you talking about?
Chances are doctors
there
are
are multiple doctors on YouTube.
A doctor,
like actual doctors, not like fake Twitch doctors.
Who is he talking
real
to?
doctors.
Wait, who is he talking to right now?
I'm talking
to
multiple doctors.
Multiple doctors does not make research.
Watches YouTube.
Multiple doctors does not make scientific consensus.
Maybe YouTube should be held to publisher standards.
Next question, go.
I swear to God, this was my question before all that started. All right, so it's mostly to Niko, but it's for anyone else on the panel. Let's say in a hypothetical scenario, there was some sort of global pandemic. And let's say that hypothetically, misinformation was being spread on social media platforms that, if followed, would reasonably result in bodily harm or death. Should social media platforms do anything about that? And what would that look like if they should?
So I don't think it should be social media platforms that get to decide whether or not information is or isn't legitimate. Because once again, everyone believed, for example, like that hydroxychloroquine and zinc was a problem, and then CNN had to retract their article. The Lancet, which is supposed to be the super prestigious medical journal, had to remove their study because it turned out to be BS after a Harvard MD who works in the emergency room called them out, and then no one could replicate their study. But policies were crafted because of it. Social media reacted to it and then never backtracked their reaction. There's some doubling down since. And people have once again died because they didn't have the potential to have access while they were waiting for a vaccine. So the social media generally, one, I don't believe they have the heads of these social media companies. They have the best interests of the powerful who pay them off and who they can pay in Congress at their heart. That's who they're worried about. They're not worried about us.
Okay.
So it shouldn't be social media's job. It should be everyone gets to put information out there, and then you have these groups, and you choose, based off the information available, what is the correct solution. But what we've seen historically, like with marijuana, for example, the same people who have pushed lies about hydroxychloroquine, or ivermectin, or interferon alpha 2B, were also telling us marijuana was going to fucking kill us. Remember? So, and they were wrong. But why did they do it? Because of the agenda. So if the same agenda that may be disallowing things to come out also could be the agenda that is why they're purporting lies about things that they're saying is good for you, or good or not good for you. So the answer is no, they should never be in charge of that. They should allow the information to flow.
Do you think like those bias narratives are curtailing the truth?
That the what scenarios?
The bias narratives, the
Yes.
idea, like an agenda.
I do. I have friends that work in the medical industry, and I know what goes on behind the scenes.
Well,
And
Capital has. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I've worked in the medical industry. I used to work in pharmaceutical advertising before I was a YouTuber, and I know what people will say to sell drugs. So I know that there are narratives, and the narrative is money in this case, and we just have to be aware of it.
Pfizer was just
Does it worry you,
right?
Stephen? Does it worry you, Stephen?
So I think that, I don't know if I would say that legislatively it should be a law, but at the very least there should be like a moral and then enforced culturally, like an obligation for these private social media companies to try to do some sort of fact checking on their platform, because like the rampant misinformation is just so unbelievably societally and physically destructive.
We definitely agree on that.
I think fact checking would be a great thing.
Sorry.
Definitely agree.
Fact checking, no, I think everybody agrees fact checking would be a great thing. It's just we don't trust the fact checkers.
Yeah,
I think that's the argument on this side.
There's influence. There's money in that.
Right.
Like in terms of like even with medical studies, there's Capital who is able to write grants to these people and not to these people based on their agenda. That's just how self-interest works.
Isn't 80% of the FDA funded by pharmaceutical companies, right? Roughly, right? And then Pfizer was the #1 donator they were #1 lobbying. I think
Well, we can get into like corruption in the FDA later.
All right, we
but
gotta go to the next question. We gotta go to the next
ask
question.
that exact question. Let's do the next question.
Next question.
Hello. Go.
Man bun.
Checkered shirt. Let's go.
Right. So Niko, this is a question for you. So I'm.
Oh, you said me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, go
So like the board of directors at most companies, they're going to have like a fiduciary responsibility to like seek profit for their shareholders, and they usually get.
Say that again. Can you speak a little bit?
So the board of directors at every company is going to have a fiduciary responsibility, like legally, to the shareholders to seek profit. Now, most conservatives, I feel like, would agree this is a good thing in most industries because it requires them to make decisions that are going to, make the most money, follow the like invisible hand of the market, all those things they believe in with, arguments for capitalism. So it's just interesting because they would like make approvals on the terms of service usually at most of these websites. So they're making decisions on like what they ban based off of what's going to make them the most money. Like there's a reason that BitChute is not as big as like YouTube at this point. So what I'm finding inconsistent is, do you want to like promote free markets and follow that, or are you trying to like intervene in the market where it's only convenient for basically your side of the
Let me just say, you know not of what you speak, Jon Snow.
I was thinking the same thing.
Nah, but
It really does look like
that.
that.
One of the reasons that you really do. One of the reasons that BitChute or any company or platform isn't as big as YouTube is because there is literally no way to be bigger than YouTube. If you would be, Google could then just harm you in the algorithm so that no one ever finds you because they receive unlimited money from the government. I need everybody to understand this concept. They don't have competition because there is no competition for black funding. So like black market funding, which is effectively what they're doing with InQtel.
Dark money.
Dark money. I mean, I
Can
wish.
you explain the unlimited money thing? I really want to know.
No, they literally get unlimited money. Yeah, it's just you can't keep track of it.
It's an infinity sign.
So so in a vacuum, I would agree that it would be a good thing for people to craft their terms of services based off of what would make the most money. But what you have though is like Facebook and Twitter both do things where they know it will hurt the engagement, which is actually how they make the most money. And they don't have to worry about the consequences because they are eternally shielded from those consequences because they're doing the agenda of whoever's in power at the time. So they don't ever have to be held accountable as long as they're following to that agenda, and then they still make money regardless. So I would love a free market in this particular case. The problem is it isn't truly a free market, and that's not obviously with just social media or censorship. It's with everything now.
Okay. All right. And next question, and direct it to somebody on the panel. We're going to try to get them all, but we can't really have too much discussion. So pick who you want, and then your question.
Anybody, up for grabs. Any radio station, any television station, any cell phone provider, anything that goes through the airwaves are dictated to be public property. So you have to have a license for the frequency that you broadcast on. Could the private property public company issue be ameliorated if you just said that the internet itself was like the airwaves and that it is public property and these private companies become in their own fiscal interest, if they want to grow, once they get to a certain scale, then they reach certain levels of regulation?
I mean, I think, or what you're saying is like, kind of switch the technology to go to airwaves so you don't have this, like, yeah, but how would you store content, though? Like, you still need Amazon Web Services.
Their broadcast towers for radio stations are privately owned.
I guess, but
servers for DirecTV, the satellites.
So is the question whether or not it should all be regulated like the airwaves are? Then,
yeah.
It's
regulated
just
like the
hypothetical.
airwaves
It's a
are
question.
actually broadcast through the airwaves.
What?
Regulated through the airwaves are actually broadcast through the airwaves.
I don't understand what you mean.
He's asking you. Like, the question you're asking, should it be regulated like airwaves have been, or should it be, you're saying that the internet should be broadcast through airwaves? I guess that's what.
Just regulated, because obviously it's not broadcast through it.
The communications bill kind of killed the way that they were regulated before.
Yeah, that's
They're not regulated anymore effectively. So,
but yeah, it's kind of weird too in a different industry. I don't
want like all of the internet to have to like be like no profanity, no obscenities, no pornography. Like that sounds like a pretty boring place.
Yeah, you'd be screwed.
But you're talking about like as a public, like basically this is a public sphere and like everything can be regulated as if you. I don't know what you. I do believe it's a public good.
All right, next question. We're ticking here. Fire away, Justin.
Next.
And make sure you're
question.
Hey, handsome.
getting coronavirus by
handsome
putting
with
the mic.
Suspenders.
Right up. Yeah. Do it, Ariel did. Get real close to the mic.
Okay, so this is for Peter and Niko. So do you believe that companies should have the right of freedom of speech? And if so, do you understand that what you're advocating for is going to be restricting the freedom of speech?
How?
Well, telling them that, oh, well, these companies shouldn't be able to ban these people for talking about COVID-19 or talking about taking ivermectin, whatever, telling those companies that they shouldn't be able to ban those people, isn't that restricting their freedom of speech?
Well, yes. In some ways, I agree with you, actually, on that. I don't know that I actually 100% think that one way or the other, as things are today, in a world where there is ownership that is very specifically concentrated among a few people and everybody else is not the same thing. I don't know that there is like an explicit, simple solution for it. So what I'm advocating for isn't necessarily just totally like, hey, you can censor whatever you want. I don't want that. I want the decisions to be made based on these sort of rational rules, which Section 230 ultimately is a rational rule. The problem is that I don't think that these companies are acting explicitly as just platforms. I think illegal stuff, like threatening stuff, that stuff, if like they have in their terms of service, you're not supposed to do this. I think that they're within their right not to have that there. I just think that if we're in the more like political freedom of speech area, and we have companies that are basing much more of their model on boosting or de-emphasizing certain content, then they should be looked at closer, not necessarily exactly the same, but closer to like a newspaper or a New York Times or somebody who solicits content and publishes it, as opposed to somebody who is just allowing people to say whatever they want on their platform.
And I would say that saying that you don't want people to restrict free speech is in violation of the First Amendment. It's upholding it. Like if for example, I'm a journalist. I work for RT News. If I get banned, then my First Amendment rights, and this is what we're seeing over and over again, journalists, verified accounts getting banned for doing their job, like you're literally violating freedom of the press. And it's like, if I say I don't want that to happen, then I'm actually against the First Amendment. That doesn't really follow. Say that again? Well, then once again, then when that corporation stops getting unlimited funding from the government, then I guess we can have a different conversation.
But he's saying they're too intertwined. All right, next question.
This one is directly for Stephen. Stephen, you've said before that one of the issues with our consumption is that viewers demand the type of content that enriches companies. Given that they also use algorithms to make their content much more engaging and addictive, would you be in favor of a Pigovian tax or a tax on negative externalities on excess viewer engagement? And do you think that would be an effective way to curb the excess influence of big tech and content companies?
I'm rephrasing this because it's hard to hear sometimes. So are you saying that if companies are motivated to get you as hooked or engaged as possible into their content, are there negative externalities related to that that should be curbed with some sort of federal legislation?
Yes, specifically a tax of some sort.
That's a really good question. I feel like the answer almost has to be yes. I feel like we've got so much literature now on how social media is negatively affecting everybody's life. I'm 32. Honest to God, I cannot imagine being in high school with like constantly plugged into like the crazy social media shit these days. I would blow my brains out. It sounds like the worst experience ever. And we have like more and more studies that show that like especially women that use these platforms are getting like worse images of themselves. Men, young, everybody is like getting fucked on these platforms. You know, is this so much of a negative externality that it demands some sort of regulation? Maybe. I mean, we've done it for things that have negative stuff in the past, like, you know, drugs. Obviously, things like cigarettes or alcohol are disallowed until a certain age. Do we need to take the same step with social media or go like a Chinese or a South Korean route where you say, like, you have a limited number of hours you can spend? It sounds really draconian. It sounds probably incompatible with our current U.S. understanding of freedom, but I feel like something should probably be done, yeah. Because
3 hours of video games per week would definitely hurt you.
Okay, okay, let's, hey.
I wasn't even allowed to play. I wasn't even allowed to play video games during the week. Lucky bastard.
So next question. Sorry. Real quick, 15 seconds. Go for it.
No, I was just going to say, I think that also can have a negative effect because we might be banning people from positive experience as well. So it really depends on how that person wants to live their life, and they have to make the decision for themselves, unfortunately. And I agree with you. I think that too many teenage women, I've made videos about this, are, you know, massively, you know, coming across more depression symptoms and anxiety symptoms. Yeah, and I think, but at the same time, some of those things can alleviate the pain, some of those internet, experiences. But it goes back and forth.
All right.
Niko, you were talking earlier about how basically our government, including the CIA, has overtaken some private businesses. I truly believe that DARPA and Lifespan was turned over the same day that Lifespan ended because it was deemed illegal and unconstitutional. It's the same day Facebook went live. Okay, so I believe these platforms are being controlled by our government, and therefore our government is using the phrase private to get away with things because they know that they could never get away with it if they went and said they were government.
Yes.
As a 21-year retired Iraq war veteran, I'm repulsed. I have had 3 Facebook accounts permanently disabled and 4 Twitter accounts for telling the truth because they don't want to hear it.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point that you brought up. I was going to bring it up, but
thank you for your service.
So, like, what she's talking about is the fact that Lifespan, which is a CIA program to track people as they get older, know exactly where you are at any point, and have you actively, voluntarily engage in telling everybody about your life. That stopped the day of Facebook going live, which was like February 2004, if I'm not mistaken. And then the female who was in charge of that program actually ended up in Facebook a few years later. So you're literally having ex-CIA agents during election years, it was 2016, I believe, is when she joined, going into the program, basically going into the mirror of the program that she was the head of the CIA, and then we're supposed to pretend as if these programs aren't doing, or these private, quote-unquote, private companies aren't doing what the government is doing, but they're hiring all the people who are involved in the government.
So this is the root again. Yeah, we're getting what you're saying, but we're kind of. Is there anything to add because we're right at time? And go ahead.
The thing that I have to add about just this conference in general, I think that nobody knows the exact truth because I think truth is hidden from us for personal biases, and I think that we just need to calm down a little bit. Too much testosterone.
That's good.
But I think I think that the point of this conference and the point of making YouTube videos and such should be more civil and more open to other people's ideas and not attacking other individuals for having different opinions. And I think that is the way to go forward.
I concur.
And I think, yeah, and I mean, that's coming from a moderate, which makes a lot of sense, right? So.
That's cool. Yeah. And the one thing I think I can say is everybody here, it seems at least, slightly favor the fact of transparency of why you would get banned. And even Stephen said he would probably vote for that law. So, I mean, that seems to be shared. So,
and antitrust laws are not strict enough. I agree.
If anybody that used to work for the government wants to sign up for my company, my email is open. I need some of that unlimited funding, so yeah, jump right on that.
That's awesome. All right, we're going to take a break.
right.
Thanks so much.
All right, so we are going to do a 10-minute sharp. So we're talking about 2